recording the meeting. And so I'm going to turn it over to the chair of the DAC, and that would be Deborah Van Aersel. Deborah, floor is yours.
The screen is mine. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate your joining us today. I know everybody's got a lot going on. And again, we have about 60 people registered for this session, which means that we're making good headway. We're engaging people. Certainly, we have room to engage more. And I would encourage you, as the time goes on, to invite your friends and colleagues to join us as we continue to grow this thing we call the Defense Affairs Committee on behalf of the Chamber and the community. I want to recognize some folks who have registered, and I forgive me, I see faces and names, and so I just want to make sure that I'm recognizing Chris Snyder, who's here as a field representative for U.S. Congressman Bob Good of the 5th District. Where are you? I don't see you.
I'm here. Thank you, Deborah.
There you go.
Thank you. I'm trying not to distract folks. I'm working on an urgent letter for
no worries. Thank you. Welcome.
Someone, unfortunately, an affidavit.
I'm sorry.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome for being here. Diantha McKeel, I did hear her. I saw her in a cup of coffee. She's with us. She's, of course, on Albemarle County's Board of Supervisors, elected board member. Kate Acuff, are you with us, Kate? I think she will be with us. She's also on the County Board of Supervisors, elected board member. Lloyd Snook, do we have Lloyd on? He is supposed to be here, mayor of the city of Charlottesville. And Tom Krabs, I know he's here. I saw him wave his hand. There you are, Tom. He is our military.
Good morning, Deborah. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. He's the military liaison out of the governor's office and has been advising us at the Leadership Council for many months. And we're just delighted you're with us. Thank you. Welcome to all of you for being here again. We're delighted to have this meeting. It's going to be really interesting, and we'll get to introducing our speakers in a little bit. But before we go there, this is an opportunity to hear from some of our folks in the community around Rivanna Station and ROTCs, et cetera. So I'm going to let Letty run us through that, and then I'll be back at you shortly. Letty?
Thank you. So, Kate, just a quick correction. Kate Acuff is an elected member of the Albemarle County School Board, not the Board of Supervisors. We're going to start with a quick update from our ROTC units at the University of Virginia. And actually, the Reserve Officers Training Corps was formalized in the National Defense Act of 1916. And we're honored today to have our 3 UVA ROTC detachment departments here to provide a snapshot update. We've put them first because they're going to have to beg out pretty quickly. They're in the middle of teaching. I know Tom Krabs will be leaving us at 12:30. He's got a hard stop as well. So, and not in protocol order, we're going to start with Colonel Michael Huff of the United States Air Force ROTC Detachment 890. Who is the commander of the unit and the professor of air science. And Colonel Huff, the floor is yours. Air Force ROTC.
All right, thank you, Letty. And yes, unusual that Air Force would go first outside of protocol. I appreciate that. As you mentioned, I'm going to be stepping out to teach class here momentarily. But thank you very much for having me. Thank you to the DAC also for inviting myself and my ROTC brethren here for today's committee. Just to very quickly give you a snapshot of what the detachment consists of, some demographics, and then kind of what we have going on this semester. So the Air Force ROTC detachment at the University of Virginia is one of 3 detachments in the state. The other 2 are at Virginia Tech and VMI. The detachment here at University of Virginia is about the 8th largest in the nation. And if you took out the military schools like VMI and the Citadel and the ones with like A&M and Virginia Tech, the ones with the big Corps cadets, we would probably be 2nd or 3rd largest in the nation. And that's because the detachment consists of not only the University of Virginia, we have cadets not only at the University of Virginia, but we have cadets who are at James Madison University and Liberty University. In fact, I'm sitting right now at Liberty University because I'm teaching class here today. So in total, it fluctuates. We've had as high as 320 cadets at one point, but we're about 220 right now. And the way that breaks out, Liberty typically has the most. So Liberty, right now, Liberty has about, half that number. So about 110 cadets. And then we're pretty much evenly split then the remaining between UVA and James Madison University. So logistically, it's pretty challenging for our cadre members. It's myself and 5 other officers who teach. So imagine that with 220 cadets, and sometimes goes up more than that. In the detachment, about a third of our cadets are female, is the breakdown, and about half of those in ROTC, about half of them are in a technical degree, because the Air Force does like and appreciate those technical degrees, and they tend to offer more scholarships if you're taking a technical degree. So that's a kind of a quick snapshot of the demographics there. This semester for us, our goals is really trying to get to normal, if you will, right? I mean, I've been in the seat now for 2.5 years. My first semester here, I'll call it a normal semester. And then my second semester is when COVID rolled in and so many things were canceled. Now we're trying to get back to what it used to be in terms of events. So we have a base visit on the schedule, something we haven't been able to do. We're going to visit Langley Air Force Base, I think at the beginning of April. We're going to have a dining out, right? Our Air Force is kind of our ball. We're going to have one of those. We're in the planning process right now. We're going to visit VMI. We have a VMI day, again, things that we used to do. And for just at UVA, we're going to be doing our award ceremony together like we used to do. And I believe the cadets are planning a tri-service sporting event. Again, so we're all excited, trying to get back to those things that we're used to do when we were in, those things that made ROTC, I guess, more enjoyable and more fun. And so hopefully those will come to fruition as we go through the semester. That's all I've got. I know I'm running out of time, and so I will bow out and then turn it over to, I'm not sure who's next there, Letty, so I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you. So next we're going to the Naval ROTC, and something I learned recently is it's not the Navy ROTC, it's the Naval ROTC, and that's because the Marine Corps also falls underneath the UVA Naval ROTC. And it came to the Naval ROTC started at UVA according to its history in 1940. And with us today is Captain Kevin Kennedy. He's the commander of the Naval ROTC. Captain Kennedy, who is retiring soon. I'm sorry to say, but happy to say. So keep that in mind, all you defense contractors out there. We want to make sure maybe we can keep him here if we find something good enough for him. Captain Kennedy, the floor is yours.
Thanks for that, Letty. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yes, I am Captain Kevin Kennedy. I'm the commanding officer and professor of naval science for the University of Virginia Naval ROTC. And Letty stole a bit of my thunder there. It is Naval ROTC, not Navy ROTC, because we do have Navy and Marine Corps. And it's actually a separate scholarship program for the two different services. You can convert from one to the other over the course of your 4 years at UVA, but it is very challenging. And the Marine Corps is downsizing, so those Marine Corps scholarships are quite hard to come by. And that's reflected in our numbers as well, which you'll see in a second. We are a unit here at UVA and ROTC. We're not a detachment. I'm a commanding officer with court-martial authorities and everything that goes with being a commanding officer, which is great and kind of bad sometimes. We figure we do about a $5 million economic impact for the greater Charlottesville area annually, based on what we pay to the university. Most of that's in tuition payments to the university. But then when you include our salaries, the salaries of my staff, myself, plus 5 officers, plus a Marine Corps gunnery sergeant and 2 civilians, and the revenue that we bring the local economy, we total that to about $5 million a year. I only have UVA. I'm very lucky in that respect. I'm not like Mike or Isaac, where I have to travel all over Central Virginia to see parts of my unit elsewhere. We only have the University of Virginia. We do not have agreements with other colleges. In fact, last week I got a call from a mother of a kid who got into JMU, and I had to send him over Colonel Huff, because we don't have an agreement with them. I already mentioned we include the Navy and the Marine Corps. One of the other differences with Naval ROTC is that all of our students go active duty upon commissioning. We do not send people to the reserves or the Guard. Just doesn't happen. Everybody goes active duty immediately upon a graduation and their commission. So we are a medium-sized NROTC unit nationally. There are 77 units nationwide, and we're pretty well right in the middle of that. We normally average about 20 students per year for a total of 80. This year, we're pretty low. We're down at 62 total midshipmen, which is what we call our students as opposed to cadets. They're midshipmen. Of that 62, 4 of them are on Marine scholarships, and we have 3 more that are interested in converting from Navy to Marine Corps. So that would be a total of 7 out of our 62. So as I said, small numbers. Demographics, 89% of our students are on scholarship, which is great. It's a good problem for us to have. 25 of our 62 are female, which is a positive percentage trend, just over a third. 3 of our 62 are African American, and 8 of our 62 are Asian or Pacific Islander. But in terms of diversity, we do not reflect society, and we do not reflect the University of Virginia, and we'd like to work on that. Additionally, we have done service assignment. We do service assignment in the fall, and this year's graduating class, we produced 11 pilots, 3 naval flight officers, which is like a navigator or a weapon systems operator, 2 surface warfare officers, one of whom will be a nuclear surface warfare officer, and the other conventional, and that's our ship drivers, 1 nuclear submarine officer, 1 explosive ordnance disposal officer, and then 1 ground Marine. So that's who we're sending out into the fleet in May. Upcoming events, we've tentatively got a dining out planned for the 18th of February. Based on the COVID numbers, I think that that's going to get pushed right on the schedule, and we're looking at that closely at this point. We have our surface warfare officer ship selection the 23rd through the 25th of February. So our 2 surface warfare officers will get to find out exactly what ship, where they're going to go to as ensigns. And then we'll do our joint awards ceremony in April, COVID permitting. The Tri-Service Sports Tournament in April with our sister units here, also COVID permitting. A dining in, which is different than a dining out in that it's just the staff and our senior class, our 4th years, scheduled for the 22nd of April. And then we've got Navy commissioning the morning of the 20th of May on the front or back steps of the Rotunda, depending on how you look at it. And then a joint commissioning ceremony with Army and Air Force the afternoon of the 20th of May in Old Cobble Hall. And then they'll go on to their summer training around the world, in fact. And then one little thing, Letty already brought it up. I will be retiring on the 11th of February. We're planning a ceremony, but right now it's looking like I'm probably going to have to cancel that ceremony because of COVID measures. But I'm still going to go quietly into the night. And then the only area where I ask for assistance from this august group is in getting the word out about us. For a number of reasons, our numbers are down the last couple of years. I think COVID plays a part in that. Applications for NROTC scholarships nationwide this year are, they're not at an all-time low, but they're very low. They're lower than usual. And especially if you know of a good, diverse candidate, we're always looking for those people in particular. So thank you very much for having me today, and I'll stand by for any comments or questions after all this is over.
Thank you, Captain Kennedy. And we'll take questions from everybody. If you can put your questions into the chat room after we finish with Army ROTC, and then if we have any questions for the ROTC across the board, we'll take them at that time. Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Rademacher is the Professor of Military Science for the Cavalier Battalion, that's Army ROTC, but he is teaching, and in his stead today, we have Captain Nicholas Hassel, who is an Assistant Professor of Military Science. Captain Hassel, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Colonel Bien. As she said, I am stepping in today for Lieutenant Colonel Rademacher as he is down at Liberty University for his MS4 classes that he's teaching down there. About myself, I am an assistant professor of military science here at UVA, have been since June of 2021, and I teach our sophomore class. I myself am actually a native of Richmond, so I'm glad to be teaching here at UVA. A little bit about our program. We are in the similar boat as the Air Force in that we are a host program that also supports Liberty University. Our program makes up about 174 cadets. There's 54 here at UVA with 120 at Liberty. The general makeup that we have is 130 males and 44 females. So a strong about 75 to 25% split between the two genders. Here at UVA though, of those 54, we're looking at an average about 15 students per class is what we have. Just this year though, we'll have 13 officers commissioning into the Army program, 27 total if you include Liberty University. Something that we're very proud here at UVA Army ROTC is the makeup of what kind of officers we commission. With UVA's medical program and law school, we look to commission about 3 medical officers a year on average and 1 legal officer a year, which is a pretty actually high number compared to the other non-senior military institute programs here in the Virginia state. For recruiting our program, we have a scholarship allocation of roughly $1.5 million here at UVA given out to cadets, which is a great number that we're doing, and we're hoping to keep actually raise that amount of money and having more people come into the program. With UVA giving us a budget roughly about $26,000 a year for spending to help cadets plan other organizations and have drives so that we can help our own recruiting initiative. Some of the things of community involvement that we're doing for our program is we have our Alumni Council and Mentorship panel will be starting up. We're looking at this February of the 11th to 12th. The goal of that is to have former alumni come in and give guidance to our cadets here of what military life could be like and what their branch that they're picking, what that career path would look like. At the same point, that panel would also help steer or guide and give input of what they would like to see or help with our program from their experiences, so we can do things like fundraising or host events for cadets, which we're actually very happy to start. We're going to do both a virtual and a in-person one between those dates. Other community involvements, we're looking to do a branch night at BMI, who will be hosting that. We will have a memorial run for a former cadet that we lost due to killed in action, the RJ Hess Memorial Run that will be happening this April, that happens every year. We do other things like the Darden Military Association Dining Out, which is more social networking that we have with the Darden Military Association coming up this March. And with how the past year has been affected by COVID, I'm happy to say that the Army is starting to move forward in how we can prepare our cadets for military training. Just this year, we have 8 slots going on for other military training events such as Air Assault and Airborne. We have 2 projected Project Go scholarships where students will be going to foreign countries to study abroad. And just this summer, we're having 8 internships for our cadets, mixing it up between going to programs such as NJIC, Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland to look into cyber warfare, and then down to Fort Gordon for information services. For any concerns, and I'm going to try to wrap up my time here, I just want to echo Naval Captain Kennedy on just getting the word out about our program. As the Army evolves and future students start thinking about joining programs and why they may want to join the Army ROTC, it has kind of changed from myself when I joined of why I wanted to be a part of the Army to today's generation of why they might want to join a military program. So just having that conversation with prospective cadets of why they would want to join our program, what benefits they would have from our program, it would just be a great help from you all to have that conversation with them. That's all I have, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Captain Hassel. And so thank you all ROTCs. Are there any questions in the chat room that you see out there?
None.
Don? Okay.
No questions in the chat.
Thank you, ROTC. We're going to move on real quickly. Mr. Schofield, are you here?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Hey, Happy New Year to everybody. Hey, just a quick thank you to, I think it's Mike, Kevin, and Nick for your rundowns on the ROTC program. It was very educational and enlightening. Thank you for all you're doing in helping to develop our future officers. I think that's very important. We appreciate what you're contributing to DOD. And Kevin, I noticed you're retiring. Congratulations on your retirement and fair winds to you. Let me get started here. I just got a couple of things I'd like to go over. First of all is to introduce our new Command Sergeant Major. His name is Wesley Davis, and he's here with me. And Wes, if you could kind of introduce yourself.
Certainly. Good afternoon, everybody. Wes Davis here. We arrived here in December coming from Korea. New to the area, but not new to Virginia. We're really excited to be coming back to Virginia and to interface with the community.
All right. Next thing on kind of, you know, I'm adding something in here I wasn't planning to talk about, but, you know, we were talking about diversity and employment, you know, looking for careers in the military. You know, we also have careers here at NGIC that we'd like everyone to know about. I don't know if Mike Flanagan happens to be online, but I'm going to jump and advertise something for him if he's not. Mike Flanagan is one of our Virginia civilian assistant secretaries to the Army, and he has graciously coordinated an event with the Department of the Army staff next Friday at 1400 over Teams, Microsoft Teams, and the Army is going to be telling us about a new internship and fellowship program they've got. In Army speak, internships are for college students and fellowships are for recent Army grads. These are STEM oriented. We're looking, of course, to recruit more STEM employees. We're also looking to, you know, improve our diversity here within the Army and within NGIC. So if anyone is interested, I think I can invite you to participate and listen in to the briefing that will be presented. If you'd like to do that, maybe let Deborah or Letty know, and we'll hook you up for that event.
Tom, I don't mean to interrupt, but I mean, Jim, I don't mean to interrupt, but I have that information. So if anyone's interested, they can reach out to me and I will email you the information.
Great, thank you very much.
And if I could real fast,
yeah.
to be clear, those are civilian positions. I don't think a lot of people outside the Army realize how many civilian positions we have and how much we need them in the Army.
Yeah, I think I should maybe just a quick education. We have about 1,200 personnel here assigned to NGIC. About 1,000 of those are civilians, and we hire about 100 new employees a year at different levels. So that's the kind of market we've got on the job market supporting the county and the area around here. Of course, we recruit nationally. Okay, just a quick update on our military construction. Many of you know about. If you don't know about it, it's we have a $60 million construction project. It's part of the a larger, about $100 million overall project to build a new wing onto our building up here at Ravenna Station and a new parking garage. The parking garage is 150,000 square feet. It's 3 stories. It's going to have 244 spaces for parking, which will help us out greatly. We still have people that have to park outside the gate here. Also, our new wing is going to have 80,000 square feet of new office space. It's going to include training and meeting spaces, laboratories, and it's going to house about 244 personnel, coincidentally. These are not new additions to Ravenna Station in terms of personnel. What we're doing is we are moving some of our personnel out of a rented facility at the end of Boulders Road. We call it Boulders 1 building, and we are moving them into our permanent spaces. So that's what the project's about. It started in August. It had been delayed by COVID and some funding. That has been resolved. Right now, the current status is we're excavating the parking lot. We're preparing to excavate for the wing. What's happened is we were going to do a sequential project with the parking garage and then the wing. But because we're behind schedule, the Corps of Engineers and the contractor, Mortensen, have come up with a hybrid plan to try to speed those along and get us to our completion date, which was the end of 2023. As I mentioned, we've got excavation going on. The impact for anyone in this area that there's going to be, or is right now, some increased heavy vehicle traffic exiting and entering onto Boulders Road off of Route 29. So please pardon the inconvenience as we all have to deal with the traffic there. There may also be, as part of the construction over the next couple of months, some short-term road closures on Boulder Road. That's all I got for today. Letty, back to you. I'm happy to field any questions. Over.
Jim, that was a great update. We really appreciate it. If anyone has any questions, we'll take them at the end. If you can just put them onto the chat, because as always, we're behind schedule a little bit. And so, so just a real quick, a DAC report. For those of you who are new, the Defense Affairs Committee of this chamber has a mission to foster economic vitality by further strengthening the relationships between the chamber's network, Central Virginia community, the regional defense and intelligence community, which is both private, public, and academic sectors, and all our veterans and families. And so at the end of the day, it's about supporting the defense community and identifying ways to expand on the sector that's essential to our national security. And the DAC has accomplished a lot of things this past year, mostly due to volunteers stepping up to solidify our importance within the region. Many highlights included, we formally opened the Defense Affairs Committee Reception Center for the military at North Fork. We've assisted local military units with some challenging requirements. We completed an electronic welcome document for incoming military and defense personnel. We had our first annual service awards luncheon at North Fork, which was wonderful. It included a speaker as well as folks from the local organizations getting awards. And we have restructured our strategic plan. We're calling it the action plan. An executive summary will be posted shortly on our website. And this document is really our blueprint for where we see the DAC focusing its attention for the next couple of years. But to continue our mission, we need volunteer engagement from all of you. So upcoming events upcoming ideas, things that we need engagement on is we're going to have the second annual Service Awards Luncheon. We would love to have a committee that pulls that together. We're going to have a golf tournament. We're looking at planning that in partnership with AFCEA, Armed Forces Communications and Electronics Association, as well as we'd like to have a corporate partner for this year's Tech for Troops drive. Tech for Troops is an organization headquartered in Richmond that provides technology and education training in that technology for in-need veterans and their families. So if you have any inclination, which I hope you do, to get engaged with, this is just a small example of all the things we are doing, then please reach out to me at the DAC, and we would like you to be more involved than just coming in for attending a quarterly meeting and getting all this great information from ROTC, from Ravenna Station, National Ground Intelligence. And I will now turn that over. That was a quick down and dirty. I will now turn this over to our chair, Deborah Van Eersel, who will now introduce our program for the day. Deborah?
Okay, well, everybody take a deep breath. That was a lot of information to digest in a short amount of time. And I want to thank Letty for all of her energy that she brings to the DAC. Just a quick reminder for everybody who, particularly those who this may be their first meeting with us. I'm Deborah Van Eersel. I work for the UVA Foundation. This image behind me is sort of a representation of our park, North Fork, which is the university's research park on North 29. And my role there is to help make it successful on behalf of the university. And I am delighted today, not only as the chair of the DAC, to be able to introduce some of my colleagues from the University of Virginia for their program today. Before I do that, I just want to thank our leadership council. Some of the members are on this call and or have had to drop off, but this work that we're doing is definitely out of love for this particular industry sector. We're just getting started, and we look to you to help us continue to move into the community, talk about the things that we do, help us with our mission. And thank you, Letty, for reminding people that we do need engagement from you and others in the community, and that there are opportunities. So I want to just reinforce that. Every quarter we have a meeting. The last time we met, we did our service awards. It was hugely successful. We have had so many great comments after that. I hope most of you are able to join us, and I hope you will continue to follow our programming every quarter. This particular quarter, we have 2 guest speakers. I know you want to chat with them. From the National Security Policy Center at UVA, the Frank Batten School of Leadership and Public Policy, we have 2 wonderful speakers. The Honorable George Foresman, who's the Executive Director. He supports all of the U.S. national security leadership and engagement activities at UVA. Through his career, which has been bipartisan, he's held many positions under both Democratic and Republican governors, under 2 presidents, Virginia's Homeland Security Secretary for a while, and he was confirmed by the U.S. Senate to serve as an undersecretary at the Department of Homeland Security. So a lot of experience under the belt. He is a graduate of Virginia Military Institute and the Virginia Executive Institute. Phil Potter is the founding director of the center, the National Security Policy Center, and he is an associate professor of graduate studies in the Department of Politics at UVA. He specializes in foreign policy and in international relations. His research focuses on foreign policy, international security, and terrorism and military violence. Unfortunately, something we've read too much of in recent years. He's a principal investigator for a Department of Defense Minerva Initiative project to map and analyze collaborative relationships between terrorist organizations. He's been a fellow at Harvard University and the University of Pennsylvania, and holds degrees from both UCLA and McGill University. And at 12:35, we reserve the remainder of our time for these 2 gentlemen to present their thoughts on where we are, state of the world, and certainly in Virginia. And I turn it over to you, George, Phil.
Thank you so much, Deborah. That was a really kind introduction. We have some slides we'll put up. We'll sort of talk through those kind of as quickly as we can. I think it'd be more interesting to have a conversation with you about how we can potentially collaborate and what we can do as a community. And also, we can't possibly sort of describe everything that we're up to in 20 minutes. So these will be the highlights, and hopefully sort of a sampling that will cause folks to then, reach out to us at the back end and have a further conversation. George, anything you want to add at the front?
No, I think we're ready to go.
All right, let's do it. So the National Security Policy Center is a relatively young organization by UVA standards. We're 5 years old at this point. We've grown dramatically in that time. However, we started out with $50,000 in a vague idea, and we've become sort of a hub for students working in the national security policy area, as well as pretty deeply entrenched in a variety of local and federal activities. And now we have a staff of 5, a budget in the sort of approaching $2 million range. And a suite of activities that I think really allow us to make a contribution in this area and hopefully be sort of a part of this ecosystem that the DAC represents. So when I'm describing what we do and our mission for external constituencies, I sort of break it down into 3 key buckets: research, teaching, and engagement. And the way we think about those is all sort of working in concert with one another to solve pressing national security problems. So we tend to be a very problem-oriented organization. We identify partners and we identify needs that they have. And then we kind of scale our activities to meet that need. And so that can range from having a student group work on a problem, up through doing a workshop where we bring together faculty who maybe don't have a lot of national security experience or exposure, who might find engaging with the Department of Defense or the intelligence community a little bit intimidating, but they may in fact have some pretty important expertise that needs to get in front of those people. We'll coordinate those sorts of meetings. Up through doing things at a fairly high level that require security clearances and engagement with leading folks in government. And so we try to sort of run the gamut and have the flexibility to meet national security requirements kind of where they are. On the research side, we produce, again, research that runs the gamut from pretty academic work, right? So in the introduction, we were talking about sort of basic science research, basic social science research on coordination between militant organizations. That's the type of work that then shows up in academic journals. It's also the type of work which none of you all can, should, or are inclined to read, I imagine. So we then go and work it through the process and sort of say, okay, what are the white papers that we can produce on this that we can put out for government? Who are the people we can talk to who can benefit from some of these insights, but retranslated and put in different terms, again, sort of getting them where they need to be. We also do a fair amount in terms of unsolicited policy papers. So one of the things that I think is sort of neat about the University of Virginia, about the Charlottesville area, and about the community that the DAC serves is our location. So again, when I'm sort of explaining this to folks who are not as sophisticated as you, I'll often talk about us being this sort of perfect distance from the DC hubbub, right? We have access, we can get there if we need to, we can bring folks down quite easily, but we also don't have to always run at the bright, shiny thing, right? So I've got some great friends at Georgetown and GW and various other places. But the nature of their location is that they have to behave a little bit like a think tank, right? They have to be responsive to sort of the immediacy of whatever the Beltway is thinking about. We are able to pick our battles a little bit more. So for example, we've been making a long-standing investment in issues around space policy, which is now the Beltway is very much kind of coming around to this. But because we were able to sort of think about that in advance and take advantage of that little bit of insulation that we have, we were able to invest in those sorts of things. And so we'll do policy papers on topics like that before the demand signal comes, and then sort of send them up and create the demand signal and say, hey, folks, we should be thinking about these issues. Then we'll often kind of convene meetings with higher level policymakers. And so on. And sometimes these then become solicited products, but if they don't, that's okay with us too. The other thing that I would say about this is throughout all of these processes, we keep our students involved at every stage. So even when we're doing things that are, pretty advanced, we make sure that at a minimum we have students in the room, or we engage them as research assistants in preliminary products that become higher level products. The last thing that I'll kind of mention on this, and then maybe have Secretary Foresman weigh in a little bit on this topic as well, are the sort of more actively contracted government reports and engagements. And so, for example, you can see on the top right here, we have a report that we did for the Central Intelligence Agency through Oak Ridge affiliated universities. And this was sort of thinking quite deeply about how they might be restructuring their research and development enterprise in order to kind of meet the needs of the 21st century. I think a lot of the work that kind of came out of that is relevant to this group because it involved a lot of thinking about how you draw collaboration between industry, academia, government, and sort of bringing those groups together using organizations or contracting formats that are a little more innovative than your traditional FAR-based contracting, and hopefully a little bit more nimble. George, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, just briefly, two things, Phil. So I think Phil teed up a major focus area across the broader Department of Defense, which is how do you bring government, industry, and academia together in a collaborative environment? And it's particularly important as we think about the 21st century and kind of where the threat environment is going. And we're seeing a demand signal from senior leaders across the Pentagon, both military and civilian, who want to understand how does technology impact the operating environment that we're living in from a national security standpoint. And if you go back to 2005, really to the base realignment and closure process, and we'll talk a little about this as we go through the presentation, I think very much Virginia was at the forefront of laying out this idea that we need to find a better way for those three spheres, that academic sphere, the industry sphere, and the government sphere, to collaborate and cooperate. And as Phil pointed out, we particularly when we did this project with the intelligence community, it underscored the importance of finding alternatives to FAR-based contracting. Not that FAR-based contracting, federal acquisition regulation contracting needs to go by the wayside, but we've got to create a more nimble, agile environment to operate at the speed of the problem. The second piece that I would offer here is I think there's a demand signal across the broader national security enterprise to bring in some different perspective. And this is one where particularly Ravenna Station with both NGIC and DIA and also NGA down there, it's the opportunity to really be a test bed for a generation of new collaboration and cooperation. All great knowledge doesn't reside in Charlottesville. All great knowledge doesn't reside in Washington, D.C. or anywhere else in the country, but it's when you can put the magic of those things together. And the final subpoint that I'll make on this is one of the focal points of the research work that we do at the University of Virginia is not only to bring our academic expertise from the University of Virginia, but really Phil's got a tremendous Rolodex to be able to reach out across the broader academic community across the United States, and we leverage others at the university. So on the one hand, it's technology, on this other hand, it's policy, and it's really where we're at right now, being able to bring those together. Back over to you, Phil.
Fantastic, thanks. And so, the teaching portfolio, you sort of are beginning to get a picture of how this works. So it's a similar thing, right? So we have a variety of courses that we teach undergraduate and graduate students inside the University of Virginia, which are designed to sort of equip the next generation of national security professionals with the skills and knowledge they need to move forward. And some of that is fairly basic, again, for this group, right? So we have a class on national security process, on foreign policy assessment that shows them the ropes. A lot of it, however, again, gets to this problem-oriented mission that I've described. So we have a partnership with the Department of Defense. They fund a series of classes that we have at the undergraduate and graduate levels, which are our Innovating for Defense classes. And these are classes where groups of students are working with sponsors inside of DoD on serious problems that they have. This has been sort of a fantastic thing that has actually led to real change. So we had a project on pregnancy and promotion that had real impact. We had one on remote resilience for UAV operators, which had real impact. And these things get taken up by leadership and pushed forward. And so, not every project has legs like that, but I would say that a remarkable number of them do. And as we all know, even things that are done by people within the Pentagon don't always have legs. And so we're pretty proud of the extent to which the students have been able to engage and make real contributions. And again, we sort of then leverage our network to allow the students to meet some senior people who they wouldn't normally have the opportunity to meet and get real feedback and engagement and a leg up in their career. So on the top there, you've got, this was a group of 3 Batten students, so a tiny group of people giving an in-progress review to General Salty Saltzman, who's the number 3 at the US Space Force, right? And so to get that, it's going to be pretty far into their career before they get that kind of face time with that level of leadership. And so it's a rare opportunity for these students to partake of that. We also do then sort of moving out of the classroom, enrolled UVA student component. We do a series of workshops, lectures that are open to the community, which we'd love to see as many of you at as possible. Those admittedly have been a little bit, curtailed due to our present COVID environment, but we have every intention of bringing those back in a pretty serious way. We take our students up for quite a lot in terms of site visits at the White House, at the Pentagon, various military installations around Virginia and elsewhere. And then the last thing I'll note here is that we do quite a bit in terms of government training and engagement. So we're involved particularly with NGIC in terms of doing intelligence analysis workshops for their workforce on subjects, both in terms of sort of tradecraft as well as topical areas where their analysts need to get smart real quick. And so that's kind of part of our broader mission to engage deeply with Ravenna Station, which we do with multiple organizations at multiple levels. George, over to you.
Yeah, just very briefly, and I know we've got about 13 minutes left before we hit the top of the hour, but you know, General Saltzman is a great example. That picture was taken in one of the academic buildings here at the University of Virginia. And you know, the kind of the so what on that is General Saltzman, very illustrious career in the United States Air Force, moved over to the United States Space Force. He shows up in Charlottesville and he was unaware that the National Ground Intelligence Center was here. Science and Technology for DIA has a large footprint here. And to Phil's point, it was easy enough to get him down from Washington. And it was also about the opportunity to talk about some of the broader activities that are going on in the Charlottesville region as a nexus for being able to bring folks together. The second point I'm going to make just very briefly on the government training. One of the things we've been fortunate about is the opportunity to be very much at the top of the pyramid, so to speak, in terms of senior leader development, cabinet level exercises in the White House, a series of development programs for the 3 stars that are getting ready to take on 4-star assignments. And the Policy Center has the opportunity to touch literally every general officer, both early in their career and those that successfully move from being a 1-star to being a 4-star leader in any of the services. We're having that opportunity to talk about the Charlottesville region as part of a broader training portfolio that we're doing. Phil, back over to you.
That's great. And that I was dragging, so that jumps us ahead a little bit, which is good. Secretary Foresman was sort of describing our engagement with the Capstone and Pinnacle programs. Those are the senior leader training for the chairman. We also, again, are involved in strategy sessions for various folks within the IC, development of tabletop exercises for folks in OSD policy, as well as elsewhere, various wargaming efforts. So again, sort of the level of engagement that we're doing, just to give you sort of a flavor for the various things we're interested in. And again, sort of pulling in students across that functionality. The last thing that I'll point to on the engagement side is we do what we call our Rotunda Retreats, which are sort of meetings of often sitting and former officials. We bring them down to the Rotunda. As we always say, one of the few things that you can convince people would be on their bucket list if they spend a certain amount of time in the Oval Office is giving a lecture and hanging out in the Rotunda. They actually sort of like that, which is great, and we leverage that as best we can. But we've done those on transatlantic relations, future of counterterrorism, issues around China. So sort of the hot button things that folks might do well to kind of get out of the Beltway. Again, going to that location issue, get out of the Beltway, sit, think, engage with their peers in a more collegial environment that they might be able to get back at the office. So moving forward to what we sort of are hoping the NSPC might be able to do for this group. Key to our mission is this idea of sort of building a bridge between UVA, government, and industry, right? And we have all of these groups represented on this call. One of the great things about the DAC is that it sort of pulls these groups together. That's not as common as it should be, right? We don't get as much of that as I think would be ideal. And so we're excited to be here for that purpose. To support sort of innovative government contracting processes. So we're sort of up to our eyeballs in these questions of, hey, how do you make these engagements more nimble in a practical way, right? And unfortunately, a lot of that does come down to questions of how do you move money around in ways that don't get in the way of achieving effect, all right? And then the last of these is where we really see our comparative advantage. If you are an academic institution, you can just never get too far away from the students. The students are where we are and what we provide that no one else provides. And so this notion of sort of access to the next generation of national security experts. George?
Yeah, Phil, why don't we just go on and go forward, and I'll hold my comment for a little later.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have lots of different ways that we've been going about achieving those missions. Two things that I thought would be kind of great to put in the back of your mind to sort of bounce around. No action items sort of here today, but I think it's something that, you know, as you're living and working in your worlds, we'd love to have further conversations about. We're in the process of we're pretty far down the garden path with DoD on developing an acceleration center. And so this is sort of a physical space where the NSPC will be located, but co-located with folks from government as well as potentially people from industry. And so this is something that I think would be, you know, a great way to have a physical instantiation of this cooperative relationship that we're talking about here. It's something that's been pioneered elsewhere in the country. There's one in Seattle. But I think it's something that the Charlottesville area is ripe to take advantage of. So that's something we've been working on pretty seriously. The second of these, which is in fact not an either or, it's sort of a both potentially, but we're intrigued with the notion of sort of partnership intermediary agreements as a vehicle for, again, collaborating between government, industry, and academia. So these are essentially 501c3s that allow for collaborative projects without some of the red tape around FAR-based contracting. George?
Yeah, and so I think that, you know, particularly as we talk through where the new administration in Richmond is going to go, and I'm sorry that Tom Krabs had to jump off, but, you know, I think as we look down the future is trimming the size of DoD infrastructure. And while you can say on the one hand, we're investing new money into the National Ground Intelligence Center, the world is filled with examples of where the US government invested hundreds of millions of dollars into a facility only to close it under a base realignment and closure process. The reason I make that point is one of the big impediments to creating the level of collaboration that actually becomes better for the government in terms of gaining an understanding of what's going on, but also better for the communities where government installations are, is everybody talks about collaboration, but it's really hard to do. And one of the great things that we've identified through existing DoD funding mechanisms, as well as these processes, is really the ability to cement informal relationships into formal relationships, because that makes the value proposition of academic, industry, and government collaboration a lot higher than it would be otherwise. Phil, back over to you.
Yeah, and just building on that, one of the things about the PIAs, the Partnership Intermediary Agreements, that is particularly intriguing to us is they are intentionally local in their structuring, right? They are meant to have a local component, a geographic component. And so that to me is very appealing in terms of sort of Ravenna Station plus UVA plus the rest of you folks. George, this one, I think you should take the lead on.
Yeah, so just very briefly, and again, noting that Tom had to jump off the phone here, but obviously a new administration in Richmond, new Secretary of Defense and Veterans Affairs in Richmond, retired Marine Corps Major General Craig Crenshaw. Craig comes into this job actually with a lot of background in state and local government relations. His expertise inside of the Marine Corps was that as a logistician. He spent a great deal of time interacting with state and local governments on installation issues. I think you're going to find a lot of continuity in terms of where his focus is going to be from the prior administration. And certainly the new governor has raised the issue of veterans, benefits for veterans as a focal point of his campaign. You know, I really think if you go and talk to the transition team in Richmond as the new governor got ready to take the reins of leadership there in Richmond, Craig's going to have really four primary activities that are going to consume his near term, maybe a fifth one. The four there are obviously operating the Department of Veterans Affairs, providing veterans benefits. You know, Virginia is, I think, the second largest state in terms of the number of veterans that are in the workplace, maybe the first largest in terms of veterans in the workplace, but we've got a large veterans population. And as the governor proposed during his inaugural address, they want to do a tax break on the first $40,000 of veterans benefits. And the reason that's important is Secretary Crenshaw is going to have to spend the next month and a half, 2 months with the Virginia General Assembly trying to convince them that that's a good idea. So a new cabinet secretary in Richmond doesn't have a lot of opportunity to focus on their agencies. They're really focused on the governor's legislative agenda. But I think as Craig comes into his role and he gets settled, it's going to be about the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Department of Military Affairs, our state National Guard, providing the appropriate oversight, liaison with the Department of Defense communities. And Deborah, I think you all ought to reach out and you ought to invite the secretary to get to Charlottesville at his earliest convenience, because in the same way that General Saltzman was surprised by what he found in Charlottesville, I suspect Major General Crenshaw, Secretary Crenshaw, would be equally surprised, but also impressed by the level of collaboration that already exists. And I think that will be an added. And then finally, their work with the Veterans Service Foundation, which is supplemental to the work of the Department of Veterans Affairs in terms of providing benefits for our veterans community. You know, if I were to put a headline on what Secretary Crenshaw is going to be focused on, Virginia, I think was ranked in 2019, 2020 by Wallet Hub as the best place for veterans in the country. We've got the second largest active duty population, only behind California in the country. I think certainly as any new governor is wanting to do, they're not going to want to go from first place to second place or second place to third place. So it's going to really be a focus on continuing to maintain the quality level of support, not only to the veterans community, but to the broader Defense Department community. And if you go back to 2005, I oversaw Virginia's BRAC activities. If we do get another base realignment and closure effort, and I think it's inevitable, given the temperature in Washington, they're going to be looking at what are those installations that are absolutely critical that can't be replicated elsewhere as far as being protected. And they're also going to look at those installations where they're getting a high return on investment in terms of the ability to leverage, whether it's industry or academia, in a way to be able to deal with the modern 21st century national security threats. Really 5-6 things there that they're going to have to focus on. Obviously, as I said, delivering best-in-class veteran services. I talked about the fact that the governor wants to cut taxes on the first 40,000 of veterans' retirement benefits. Governor Youngkin has spoken very aggressively about the importance of coastal resiliency, and you can translate that from a DoD perspective of ensuring that whatever the effects of climate change are, that we don't take our large military enterprise in the Hampton Roads region and have to cannibalize it because we've not thought about it. Virginia's done a great job of preparing for the next round of BRAC. We don't know when it's going to come. We continue to operate under a continuing resolution. There are a lot of challenges in Washington, but I can't predict when the BRAC is going to come, but we know another BRAC is on the horizon. The other two things that you've heard from the governor, both when he was on the campaign trail and at his transition team work through it, is really about how do we do better at our defense-related economic development. Charlottesville is a great example of where great work is being done, but I think maybe even greater work can be done. And Phil has teased out a couple of mechanisms that it may be worth the DAC considering as it goes forward. And the big one for the Defense Department, and if you spend any time with our Deputy Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of Defense, is really about how do we bring technological innovation in a more rigorous, responsive way to the needs of the Department of Defense, but also the intelligence community and the broader national security community. DIA's S&T Directorate, the National Ground Intelligence Center, NGA, other activities, and particularly DIA, that's predominantly science and technology focus at Ravenna Station. It's really about being able to not only see over the horizon, but do so without overlooking the horizon. And the horizon is filled with technological innovation challenges for the national security establishment. And it frankly was a large part of what drove the Central Intelligence Agency to reach out beyond the normal Beltway community and say, we want a group, and as Dr. Potter pointed out, in that particular case, the University of Virginia and Oak Ridge affiliated universities take a look at what does the next generation of technological innovation look like inside of the IC. And I think we also need to be thinking about what does it look like inside the Defense Department and what role is it that Charlottesville, Albemarle region wants to play in that. So with that, let me take a little bit of a pause. Letty, I know we're right at the top of the hour, but we'll stay as long as necessary to take any questions.
Are there any questions from the group for our distinguished speakers?
Actually, I have one. Where are we looking to put this acceleration center?
So we're eyeing some space on 10th Street.
All right. The only other question in the chat was for NGIC, and that was, what's the size of the Milcon appropriation to build that parking garage and new wing? How much was appropriated for that?
Yes, that was about $60 million over.
All right. That's all the questions from the chat.
George and Phil, if you could send me the slides so that we have them available for any of our members who would like to get those. Boy, that was a lot of information that's really, really interesting. I mean, I was taking so many notes and my brain was going 100 miles an hour on things we could do, should do, might do, that deal with collaboration. And so I'm thinking the DAC and the National Security Policy Center, we need to do a little bit more togetherness as we move forward. And
Letty,
yes.
if I might just briefly follow up on that. And part of what we were trying to do was give you a overview snapshot. There's a lot of other things going on and we need to talk about that. So Deborah, I was watching your face when Dr. Potter answered the question of why not the research park versus 10th Street. And one of the reasons is DOD was looking for us to put this innovation center as close to grounds as we possibly could so that you create that environment where students are able to interact with senior distinguished visitors, if you will, you know, and ideally, if we could have the research center right next to grounds and make that easy, we would have done it. But that's why downtown versus up at the research park. But a large part of this is really trying to drive as much activity, whether it's geographically located downtown or at the research park, drive as much of this collaboration.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge premium being placed on the notion that students are going to be walking there and deeply engaged with this at every level, right? And so particularly where that investment is coming from, that's a particular focus for that
I
group.
think Letty is absolutely right. There are some great opportunities for us to be maybe more closely aligned with what you're doing and leveraging one another's activities, reach whatsoever, however we can. So look forward to maybe getting some sort of smaller group discussions around that. Letty, we'll be in touch on that, and then definitely take up your recommendation to invite the secretary to join us. Hopefully, maybe even for the next meeting, if we can, we could have him a presenter for our next quarterly meeting.
I do have one question for the group. As a former DIA senior intelligence officer, I know there are a lot of folks that come to this area intentionally to retire here, and they bring a lot of expertise. They leave the government and just kind of stick around. Is there a way for any of them to be useful to these programs we've been talking about today?
It's a great point. We had a meeting, was it yesterday, George, with recently retired, very senior person from the Central Intelligence Agency who was offering exactly what you're describing. We are often able to include people like that in our programming. We, at a minimum, are able and really inclined to link them up with our students in terms of mentorship opportunities. So those groups I described that we're working on Department of Defense problems, for example, we try to put them with a senior mentor who might be able to help them think that through, understand the implications of what they're doing for the broader national security system, and just give them that familiarity with how the whole process works. And so, yeah, anyone who sort of meets that description or would like to engage in those sorts of activities should certainly feel free to reach out to us.
Great.
And in hopes of sort of saving your workflow a little bit, Letty, I put the slides up in the chat if anyone wants to just pull those down at this point, but otherwise feel free to circulate those as you see fit.
Thank you. I see there's another question in the chat that says, who's overseeing the development of the new wing at Ravenna Station and the parking garage?
This is Jim again. Can you hear me? Over?
Yes.
It's being run out of the Corps, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and I believe that's the Norfolk District, in collaboration with the garrison at Fort Belvoir, and of course the contractor Mortensen. Over.
Thank you. Well, we're past our time. We've got still about 32, 34 people still hanging in there. So we really appreciate you all being there. George and Phil, if we were doing this in person, I would maybe give you a Jefferson Cup, but we're not in person, so I owe you one. Thank you guys so much. It was so interesting. I hope everyone on this Zoom found today's meeting to be robust and interesting, and we hope you'll engage with us as we try to meet those goals that we see from the National Security Policy Center, as well as the ROTC departments and the Chamber's DAC committee. So without any further ado, Deborah, closing remarks?
Thank you all for being here and have a wonderful rest of your week and weekend. See you in the next quarter, and we'll see all of our leadership team members in the next month. And thank you to our distinguished guests who we introduced at the front end. And thank you, George and Phil, for your great presentation.